High Fear best built aspect of Moros. We are starting with Hestia's Hearthgate, because her magic regen actually applies to Moros' attacks and Omega attacks, so it essentially gives you unlimited mana as long as you have enough to... well, actually it's just unlimited mana pretty much. Just in between each Omega special, you want to at least hit enough enemies to charge back up for an Omega special. And of course, if you don't know how Moros plays, you're gonna want to always upkeep that Omega special, and then whenever it goes down, you're gonna want to pull it back up. That's kind of the rotation. It's Omega special, attack while it's up, and then get an Omega special up. For your core boons, Arctic Ring for safety is pretty great on Moros. Freezing enemies is always good. And then the attack is going to be Hera. Hitch is an amazing status, high percent, and dealing with rebuke barriers at high fear is great. Special, ideally you pick up Zeus for Blitz. Very good Blitz applicator. Very high damage. And then since Moros does so much damage, you're going to be popping and reapplying that Blitz constantly, so it helps a ton. Other gods you could pick up instead of them are Apollo. We have here is still a great attack, gives you much better AoE, which is safety in a way, still high percent. And then even something like Demeter on the special. Also Aphrodite on the attack. It's less AoE and no hitch status, but it's just a ton of percent damage is always good. And then for other support gods, you have Hephaestus like always, Trusty Shield min condition, just be careful about priming magic. Moros is very flexible and does incredibly high damage at base level, so you can do a lot of stuff with this aspect. Just get Hearthgate, you have unlimited magic, Omega Special, and then attack. Once your Omega Special drops, put it back up. That's all you gotta really do. Flex into any attack, special, safety tools that you're comfortable with. Those are just my recommendations. Since we got Apollo, I'm just gonna take his attack, even at common. It's pretty strong. Also, hammer-wise, you're gonna go Clean Candle as your 1, Channel Speed is everything on Moros, probably Clean Helix as your 2, so that's Omega Special Channel, and it's gonna use less magic, and then probably Sustain Spark, and then Mega Spark as your 3 and 4. Sustain Spark is gonna give you move speed and fire rate, and Mega Spark is just gonna give you damage, essentially. The travel speed or travel distance on Moros isn't going to really do much. So we only got 40% on our attack. But once we get into our Omegas, they have a pretty crazy radius. As well as, like I said, Moros' base attack power, attack damage is so ridiculous that although it's just 40% extra, having this very large AoE from Apollo is pretty awesome. A little worse at dealing with those rebuke barriers than Hera, of course, if you're playing with those on. On 32 Fear, I do not. So it's not a big deal. Bonk. Oh, we got Aphrodite. Can't really do much with this, I would say. We could take the cast. I was going to hold out for Demeter. We could look for a Passion Rush. Shameless Attitude's pretty good. I just don't want to prime way too much magic. Sure. Probably wouldn't do Secret Crush either. I'll take a Passion Rush. Artificer's just making us flex into some pretty strange gods. I have Boatman on, so our goals are already kind of covered. Big thing with Moros is just clicking some early magic if you're playing with the Vow of Arrogance. And be careful about staggering enemies. It's not always a consistent stagger. Your Omega Special doesn't stagger, so either your attack or your attack explosion AoE has to hit the enemy to stagger. Have to make sure you're kind of playing in the right Moros explosion range for that. And like I said, always upkeeping your Omega Special. One of the more mechanical weapons in the game, I would say. Very fun. We're still going to be looking for Lethal Snare here. Most of our damage comes from our attack, so we're going to be rolling for that. That's always big. I'll take an E-Core from the well. We are on Apollo 1, Aphrodite 2, Hestia 3. I'm down to go with Demeter here. Still looking for that beautiful Arctic Ring. We're dropping the cast for the Fury's damage anyways, and now Lethal Snare. So just putting Arctic Ring on top of that would be really awesome. We can 5-god pool via a keepsake still as well. This is a good trade in terms of losing 13 HP. For 25 health, but I'm kind of just too lazy to go through the whole animation. We do use hexes, we can take that as well. And as always, the first 4 locations in Erebus, you cannot be offered any skips, so don't mind non-menus or menu rooms. Room 5, you can start to see skips, so unless there's a very good reward on the door that is a menu reward, I would recommend staying with the non-menus to try to get things like Nemesis, Fountains, Cocoons, and Artemis. We hit Nemesis at location 6, your shop starts to show up. You also have an NPC encounter in every biome. Sadly, our NPC encounter Arachne stacked with our shop. Because I'm able to afford my shop, I would rather go there. If you're not, probably just go Arachne in that situation. We did our boss already, so all that's left in our Erebus now is the Cocoons room, the Fountain room, and Artemis. We also already hit Artemis. So there's that. So actually all that we have left is a Fountain room and a Cocoons room. Fountains can be menus. Cocoons cannot. We also ended up with the Hex. The best Hex, in my opinion, Total Eclipse. Giving us 1,000 damage whenever it drops. Very strong damage Hex. There's also an upgrade for it called Eminence that makes it so when dropping your Hex, before it actually hits the ground, you will be impervious. Which is incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. We could give up a Passion Rush. This doesn't actually take Aphrodite out of our pool. Or we could turn our cast ranged. I don't really want a ranged cast. Definitely don't want Control Burn. I'm actually down to delete Passion Rush for magic. Don't really need another Hestia boon. We'll take magic. Honestly, Hestia for Moros, it's just a magic regen, really. You don't want much more than that. There's some okay stuff. That Burnt Offerings gave us HP and magic. It was obviously an epic, so it took away some magic too, funnily enough. Because of the Vow of Arrogance. Another 30. We got another well. Make sure you're always checking your wells. But yeah, we got a... Our Erebus was a little strange. We got a location 5 Artemis, a 6... boss, a 7 Nemesis, and then an 8 shop Arachne, if I'm not mistaken. Could have been really strong if we just didn't stack Arachne with our shop. And then no Fountains room nor Cocoons yet, but that's okay. We should be plenty good on time. Even with this very large room. Yeah, so we don't have a hammer yet. Something I like to do is always hammer check on the last door of a biome if I have the rolls. A free Aphrodite boon. I'll go one more to try to hit that hammer. There it is. It's another reason I like Boatman is because you can just be aggressive on your rolls. Obviously, the final door is always a major reward. And if you don't have a hammer out of Erebus, it's a pretty good chance of seeing it. I didn't mention Leaden Spark. That's a pretty okay hammer. You will knock back some enemies. It's not a big deal on Moros. You do get 10 base power, which is quite nice. Out of the 3 we were offered, it was definitely the best option. Armor shredding specials and a little bit bigger specials is not that big of a deal on Moros. I'd much rather just have the base power. Bonk. Would have much preferred Clean Candle, Clean Helix, or Sustain Spark, but it is what it is. Oh yeah. Let's get behind our frog. But yeah. The Fountain and Cocoons rooms I mentioned can be in Erebus and Oceanus independent of each other, so you can see them twice each. Nemesis and Artemis you can only encounter once per run. I have an ignited E-Core and kind of just glided into Heckgate by accident. There we go. So we can get another Fountain's Cocoons down in Oceanus. Nemesis and Artemis have been burned for the run. We won't see them again. We have our shop mid-boss and NPC encounter for Oceanus being Narcissus. In Erebus as well, you can always see your mid-boss twice. So if you get it lined up with your shop, you can go to your shop first, and then you'll see it again afterwards. In Oceanus, you don't always see your mid-boss twice. There's a chance you'll see it a second time, but it's not guaranteed. So you kind of have to weigh the risk-reward in terms of taking it. As for keepsakes, after the first biome, we have our attack. Aphrodite's technically considered in our pool. We have a nice safety net in Arctic Ring. I feel pretty comfortable with just Arctic Ring on the aspect of Moros with the high damage and mobility. If you don't, you can always take a Face Disc, go for that Trusty Shield mint condition. Here, I would like to pick up Zeus still for my special, because it's very strong. So I'm going to go ahead and put on his keepsake and get some Zeus Blitz. The other options you have would be, in terms of aggressive keepsakes after your first biome, if you want more damage, would be something like an experimental hammer to get an extra Daedalus hammer. I already mentioned Hephaestus on the Adamant Shard if you want that safety. If you're missing anything else, if you don't have an attack, you want Hera's attack. If you don't want to have an attack, maybe take Aphrodite or Apollo, dependent on your preference for the attacks we mentioned. Like I said, I want my special. I already have my cast. You're always going to start Hestia again for unlimited magic on Moros. And yeah, that's about it. If you want a defensive keepsake, if you have your god pool solidified, if you're a little bit scared, if you're low on life, if you don't want to take the experimental hammer, you know, you got what you want, just go with the engraved pin. It's always that bread and butter. You'll fall to 0 HP, get 10 seconds of imperviousness, and if you can clear the encounter in that amount of time, you will save your Death Defiance and restore to 60 HP. I said in... Oh, you can also check your codex, or not your codex, sorry. You can go to your boon menu, pull it up, you'll see Total Eclipse. You can mouse over it, hit whatever the info button is for you, and then check what your hex has. It's good to do this before taking a Path of Stars upgrade, because if your hex really has nothing you want to upgrade into, you could roll off of it and get a different reward. For me, I have Eminence, which is what I mentioned. After using your hex, you are impervious until the blast, so this Path of Stars upgrade is actually awesome, because I really want that. It's just a whole nother safety net for us that makes just like dropping Eminence worth it no matter what. It's pretty good already for 1,000 damage. It gets worse when you add in, you know, rebuke barriers, because obviously most of the time if you're just dropping it on an enemy's head, it's just going to be getting hit. It's just going to pop one barrier of rebuke, so it gets a lot worse. But putting Eminence on it, 1, 2, 3, we are still 1 away, sadly, because it was the lowest upgrade path. A Hermes boon, we do not have one. I don't know if I mentioned. I did mention Channel Speed. Channel Speed, very important. Hermes has Nimble Mind. If you just want safety from Hermes, Nitro Boost is always a solid pick. You get that barrier of damage, blocking, or resistance, and that extra sprint speed. But a really great thing on the aspect of Moros is Nimble Mind, because you get Omega Channel Speed for both your special and your attack. There it is. I'll be taking that. It's my preferred Hermes upgrade for Moros. And I believe Channel Speed is all multiplicative, so stacking it with things like Clean Candle, Clean Helix, and even Channel Speed just from Chaos is pretty incredible. Gonna roll off a menu room being a palm into a non-menu room, just in case we hit the potential fountains or cocoon rooms that is left here in Oceanus. Palms also just don't do all that much in Hades too, so rolling to something like HP or money is much more influential in my opinion, on top of the fact that it could also just give you a skip room. If palms could give you skip rooms, then sure, but they can't, so swapping off them feels a lot better. So I wanted to go to the shop to demonstrate that the boss may or may not show up. In this case, I took the shop skip and got lucky and saw my mini-boss a second time. Usually when you see it a second time, it's going to be uh-oh the rat instead of the sea serpent, so not only do you get the shop and then the mini-boss, but you also get a faster boss encounter, which is pretty awesome. Unless you have some sort of armor shredding hammer, in that case the sea serpent's much faster than uh-oh. In terms of a Hestia boon, I don't really want one. In terms of a palm, I do have a lot of money, so I would actually love to palm my attack here, because it's like 20% on the first palm. Yeah, that's pretty big. And then hopefully we'll be able to pick up Zeus's special. It is uh-oh. We have our Lethal Snare, Leaden Spark, our attack, a nice Arctic Ring for safety. We've got Nimble Mind for channel speed. And then we'll hopefully be polishing it off with, like I said, the Zeus Spesh. And we are 1 upgrade away from Eminence on our Total Eclipse. So even if we saw a minor Path of Stars upgrade in the Morning Fields, we'll be able to get that. Gonna roll for the special here. It's our first Zeus Spoon. We are gonna rarefy. We have his Keepsake for extra damage. We have plenty of magic. Moros is a magic-oriented aspect, so of course you need to be careful and keep enough magic to use it. But as long as you have enough for an Omega special, you should be okay. Just, you know, the more the better, because then you can really stack it up and not have to worry about ever running out. Final shop, have enough gold for a boon. Don't really want the palm or HP. I'll hit a mystery. It's a Demeter. We got Hailstorm. We have plenty of magic, so I'm going to go ahead and take it. It's going to make our cast, aka our freeze effect, also cause lightning bolts to repeatedly strike afflicted foes. We could also rare crop to potentially hit like our attack for damage. Which would be pretty nutty, but we have a lot of rarity besides that, so it's not really worth it. It's a free strong duo boon. I really don't mind taking it. We're not going to see a shop for a while, so I do want to palm again. Just going to go ahead and hit the attack for another 15%. Which is pretty solid. Like I said, palms are good and they're influential. It's just taking them on a menu room is not ever really recommended when you can just roll to a non-menu, get something like money, and then, you know, 100 gold almost gives you enough to buy a palm from a shop either way. Should polish off Jetty here. Just drop our Total Eclipse. Refresh our Omega Special. Drop the Lethal Snare. Very good damage. We have the extra Apollo AoE, the Zeus Blitz application, Arctic Ring. Great damage overall. And yes, we could be proccing Origination, but it's really only 50% additive damage versus all the gold and rolls from Boatman. I'd be out of my rolls already. I would have had 300 less total gold to buy things, and that is why we don't use it. I said in the best build series I'm going to stick to the defensive keepsakes just to illustrate how to use those and when to use those and whatnot. Not the aggressive ones. Like I said, Experimental Hammer after Erebus, if you're taking max skips, will last you all the way to Chronos on max fear. I assume you're taking max skips to help out your timer, because if you're not, what are you doing? Unless your timer is real good and you're comfortable with it, but it's always nice just to have a nice healthy timer. We got the attack, the Zeus Blitz, the Arctic Ring, Nimble Mind. Lead and Spark, very okay Daedalus Hammer, not anything special. Yeah, Experimental Hammer is a nice aggressive keepsake. In the fields, if you do want to take something that is not the engraved pin, I would recommend Metallic Droplet. It is very strong, especially on the aspect of Moros, because it gives you move, strike, and channel speed. So not only do you get move speed to close the gap with the aspect of Moros, you get that strike speed, and you get the channel speed, which is absolutely massive. This is not going to be an onion, so we could roll it. It's Aphrodite. Don't want much from her. Don't want much from anyone, honestly. I'll take a Zeus Spoon, I suppose. He has some good upgrades. We had Hailstorm off of Demeter, and Zeus is special off of Zeus. I don't really know what we would want. There we go. We could take a Static Shock, but we prime quite a bit of magic. I would prefer to just take a double strike here. It is going to give us 15% chance to double our blitz damage, and it is going to work on a Hailstorm, so it's pretty strong. Plus, it's not going to prime away 60 magic. It's only going to be like the 10 from being a rare. So that's solid. I don't know what I did last night. I'll just take another Zeus Spoon. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. Air quality, we're not really close to. I guess we'll just take an Electric Overload. It's common, doesn't prime any magic. And it's 10 extra damage per Blitz Pop. We got a 2-room Fields encounter, so this can happen. Also in Fields, obviously, you're forced into your first room. Second room, if you're under time pressure, take your mini-boss. Third room, if you're under time pressure, please go to Echo. It's a non-combat skip, saves you a ton of time. And then the final room, you're just picking based on rewards. I already got Nimble Mind from Hermes. Don't care too much about a Palm. I would love to get that Path to Stars upgrade for Eminence on Total Eclipse. A little bit of extra money always helps. You're either going to get a 3 encounter or a 2 encounter here. This is a 2 encounter, which is just a bit faster, which is always nice. They're pretty rare as well, so it's kind of cool to see. I barely see them. But yeah, that's about that. Keepsakes going down to Tartarus. I guess I could just touch on now since I'm just clearing these encounters out. There's not really that much to do. Aggression in Tartarus is White Antler. You get crit chance, but your maximum health is locked to 30. Going for safety, you're just going to stick with the old engraved pin. Being able to drop to 0 HP, finish the encounter, and then if you do heal back up to 60, it's just such an incredible defensive tool once you have your God pool figured out. And you're all done with God keepsakes, and you're just looking for a little bit of extra defense to win your run, and to have a pseudo form of healing on 32 Fear, because we play with the max Vow of Scars. It's just like the best keepsake to have. There's not really much else to do. If you're comfortable off it, you'll just go for one of the aggressive, like more damage-oriented keepsakes I have recommended. If you're not comfortable without the pin, take the pin. pretty much all there is to it. Okay, sure. There's a Daedalus Hammer in our final shop. We have just enough for it. Don't mind if I do. We get Sustain Spark. I'll probably take Sustain Spark over Triple Helix here. You get 1 extra Omega Special. You already apply Blitz pretty well. This just gives you more attack speed, as well as move speed. So you get more damage and more general survivability, which is pretty awesome. I do believe it also affects your attack channel speed, so... Drop our Blitzes, our Arctic Ring Hailstorm. We got that epic Lethal Snare. We'll throw down a Total Eclipse with Eminence. We have that Imperviousness as well. There's our first Serb phase. We would be dealing overall more damage if we had even just like higher Aphrodite %, or obviously Hera with Hitch. In our case, we have Apollo, so still solid %. But it's more AoE, which is still really nice for your room clear. A little worse for bossing when you're on that single target. You don't really need the AoE, but it doesn't hurt. You can play a little bit farther back. Go ahead, let them pop up. Drop our Total Eclipse with Eminence. Drop our Arctic Ring with Hailstorm. Hold down our Omega. Use it until our specials are gone. I'm going to throw out an early Omega special, just to get our Total Eclipse Eminence back up. And we are into Tartarus. But that's pretty much it for Moros. It's just a rotation of Omega special into hold your attack button until the Omega special drops, and then rinse repeat. And then, like I said, the safety tools are Arctic Ring, Engraved Pin, Total Eclipse Eminence, and Hephaestus. And then you have lots of different damage tools. We talked about the hammers, we talked about our attacks. Apollo, Aphrodite, Hera. We talked about our specials, Zeus. Really put anything on the special you can find in your run. Zeus is the ideal, and you can always go for it like I did if you want that blitz damage. It's not necessary. Moros does a ton of damage just on the attack. If you play with Origination, you can always just throw a status on it to proc that. If you don't, you can just put something that's helpful. That you just find in your run if you don't want to specifically put on a keepsake for it. Whatever you're comfortable with. It's a super high damage, super flexible, super highly mobile aspect. One of the strongest aspects in the game. It also uses magic. So it gets to use things like Total Eclipse and Eminence, which helps the damage and survivability a ton. Yeah, you're always attacking on the torches. You're always kind of floating around. It's super fun. You're not really stuck in place like a lot of weapons or attacks. Don't need to go to Hades. It's just going to make us fight more enemies. I just prefer not to most times. If you think his upgrades are worth it, go ahead, be my guest. I just don't care that much about an old grudge or a deep descent most times. If I see him farther down the line, like if he's 1 or 2 rooms away from the Kronos fight, it'll make it a little more worth it, since he'll have less of a negative impact on your run. Same with mini-boss. It's just a whole nother encounter you have to do in Tartarus, a mini-boss you have to fight. Especially for me, like if you need a boon in your run that you think is going to be crucial to help you win, you can fight your mini-boss if you're not playing with the Vow of Bitterness, the Onion, because obviously it would be the Onion otherwise. But if you don't think it's like really crucial to your build or to help you win, then I don't really recommend fighting the mini-bosses. You just want to get into Tartarus, get the Kronos, and get out as fast as you can. Pretty much the plan. Go ahead and drop a Total Eclipse here. Give me that invulnerability shield.
A few more chambers still.
Few more chambers. Yeah, I mean, you can see the Apollo AoE in %, the general Moros damage, even without a ton of channel speed from things like Chaos, Clean Candle, or even Clean Helix. Total Eclipse Eminence, the Arctic Ring, just freezing enemies and then just dropping the hammer on them. Even extra base power from Leaden Spark. Ow. And then, of course, we always have our pin in our back pocket just in case we are killed. Moros, like I said, has a ton of base damage, so you kind of want to build around survivability. If you want to play like Arctic Ring, Hephaestus, and look for that Total Eclipse Eminence, as well as an Engraved Pin, it's totally understandable too. Even going full safety, and having like no attack, no special is probably still enough damage for you to beat Timer in 32 Fear. So if you're struggling on this aspect, feel free to do that. It's not a bad idea at all. You know, get your Trusted Shield, get your Mint Condition, get Total Eclipse with Eminence, get an Arctic Ring, and then just put whatever on your attack and special. Take your engraved pin, you know? It'll work. It has the damage. I'll tell you right now. It's Moros. This thing's got all the damage. It's probably the top two aspects. Very, very high. Next to, you know, Charon, I would say. They're probably the 1 and 2 right now in the game. In my opinion. Moros, a little less safe than Charon until you have like the full setup. Arctic Ring, Total Eclipse Eminence, etc, etc. As it's a very close range aspect, but the damage just makes things like, you have to worry about so much less just because your damage is so good. I'll hold my Total Eclipse for the next one here. You have a lot of fluidity and mobility with Moros. I don't play it enough myself, to be honest. Very fun, but... Gotta hit my panic button real quick. You can always, if you want to like really farm up your Total Eclipse too, I'm not really doing a good job of showing it off, but you can just throw out like a ton of specials to charge it up really fast. And then that way, whenever you're worried about the big man hurting you, you can just pop your Total Eclipse. Bum bum. Even like when you're just waiting here, it's like just well to farm it up, right? Like look how fast this is, even with low channel speed. This is really how you should play with Total Eclipse Eminence in a boss fight. Because it's just like impossible to lose, you know? You gotta be careful and make sure you have enough magic, but... Whee! And there it is. The high fear / 32 fear best builds with the aspect to Moros. We went over the attacks, specials, defensive and safety tools, as well as Daedal's hammers. Did a bit of an over-explain like usual. If you want me to add anything to the series in terms of explanations, anything I'm not covering that you have questions about, leave it down in the comments below. Anyways, alright man, thank you all for watching and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. It really does help me out a lot. And if you want to keep up with more of my Hades 2 content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks again for watching. Okay, bye. And a massive thank you to my members for supporting the channel.